Hi everyone, Cobweb Rose here, and today I want to make you guys a video explaining all the permits that you're going to need on your thru hike of the Appalachian Trail this year. So let's dive right in. Now, for you northbound thru hikers, the first place that you're going to need a permit to hike through is this Great Smoky Mountains National Park. This park walks the North Carolina-Tennessee border, and it's a really beautiful place. Now, if you guys followed my journey on my 2023 thru hike of the Appalachian Trail, you know that the Smokies and I kind of have a love-hate relationship, and part of it stems from this permit. That being said, the permit will cost you $40, and you can obtain it from the smokiespermits.nps.gov. You need to obtain this permit within 30 days of entering the park, and you need to know your rough entry date when you write it on your permit, because your permit is only good for 8 days. So once you get your permit, you basically have 38 days to go completely through the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Now, this does include any time that you decide to take off to go into places like Gatlinburg or maybe Pigeon Forge if you're going a little farther out. So do take that into account, that if you plan to go through the Smokies at a leisurely pace and go into Gatlinburg, just remember to do all of that within that 8-day time frame. When my trimley and I passed through, we did end up taking a 0 in Gatlinburg, and I ended up going home since I live in Asheville and it's not that far away. So we ended up taking the full 8 days to go through the Smokies, but it's completely up to you guys what you want to do. Now, you need a paper copy of this permit when you're going through the park. When you enter the park from the Fontana Dam side, or even from the northern end of the park, there will be a box with green writing on it that says AT thru hikers deposit permits here. You will get 2 halves to your permit. One is for entering and one is for exiting. You'll put the same information on both, which, if I remember correctly, is basically just your entry and predicted exit date. And you'll have one paper copy, obviously, that you didn't deposit at the initial box that you'll carry with you throughout the park. You can be asked to show your permit by any ridge runners in the park. We weren't when we ran into a ridge runner, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. So just bear that in mind. And just a couple of weird rules in the Smokies. It's the only place on the trail that you are required to stay in the shelters unless they're full. Now, that being said, when I did my 2023 hike, COVID restrictions were still kind of loosely in place, which meant that you could camp anywhere you wanted around the shelters, and that's what most of the thru hikers were doing. Also, in the Smokies, section hikers do have precedence to stay in the shelters, because unlike AT thru hikers, they have to register every campsite that they'll be at every night that they're in the park. Because thru hikers don't really have a fixed schedule or a time frame other than that 8 days by which we have to be out of the park, we don't actually have to specify which campsites we're stopping at. So that's why section hikers get precedence for taking spaces in the shelters. That being said, the campsites around most of the shelters in the Smokies are not great. A lot of them are very tilted or rocky or just not overall fantastic for camping, primarily because they want you to stay in the shelters to minimize the impact on the environment in the area. So that's just something to keep in mind. Now, when you go through the Smokies, and because you need that paper copy of your permit, make sure that you're printing it before you go into the park. When we went through northbound, we ended up stopping at the Nantahala Outdoor Center in North Carolina and printing our Smokies permits from the outfitter there. It was really convenient, and they tell you exactly how to do it. You basically just go online, obtain your permit, pay your $40, and then they send you an email. You pull up that email while you're at the knock, and you can print your Smokies permit. It was free when we did it there. I don't know if that's changed since 2023. If you're going southbound, you can print your Smokies permit from the Bluff Mountain Outfitters in Hot Springs. I'm sure there are other places along the trail where you can print your permits. And if you're going northbound, chances are you're gonna be entering the Smokies before 30 days into your hike. So you could honestly get your permit right before you leave for the trail, just so long as you're through the Smokies within that 38 days. So that's going to be the first section when you're headed northbound that you're going to need a pay permit to hike through. All right, so the next section that you're going to need a permit to hike through when you're on your northbound journey is Shenandoah National Park, or the Shennies as we affectionately call them as thru hikers. Now, this year they're doing a different system. When I went through in 2023, you actually came to a box. When you first walked into the park, it was a registration station. You wrote out a paper permit for yourself, dropped one sheet in the box, and carried the other sheet on your backpack as you were going through the park. Now, this year they've changed the system. They're getting rid of those boxes with the paper permits that you have to do copies of and leave in a box when you go in the park. This year, starting January 11th, 2024, you now have to obtain a permit online from recreation.gov. And I'll put the link below so you guys can go directly there. Now, the permit system is a little bit wonky as far as pricing goes. So it used to be free to hike through the Shenies with that permit, and now they're charging $9 per person plus a $6 fee per reservation. So if you're hiking solo, your fee to obtain this permit is going to be $15. That's the $9 for your single person self plus the $6 reservation fee. If you're hiking in a tramily and you're all intending to stay together and camp together while you're going through the Shenies, then it's just $9 per person and a single time reservation fee. Now, I think you have to purchase all of the permits, like one person has to purchase all the permits at the same time in order to only pay that reservation fee once. I'm not sure because I didn't go into the system and actually try to get a permit. So if you guys are getting your permits through the system and you happen to know the answer to that question, please comment it below because that'll really help people who are trying to get their permits. But my understanding of the system is that if you have 2 people that you're registering, it's $9 per person plus the one-time $6 fee. So it'd be $24. So if you have 3 people, it'd be $33 because you have the 999, which is $27, plus the 6, which brings it up to $33. Now, these permits you can get up to 90 days in advance, and they're good for 14 days, so you can take a nice leisurely pace through the Shenandoahs. You need to carry with you a digital or hard copy of the permit. So once you get your permit, you can easily screenshot it and not have to worry about carrying paper through the park. But if you're really feeling old school and want to carry a paper copy of your permit, I'd recommend trying to find a place in Harpers Ferry or Waynesville, Waynesville being on the southern end of the Shenies and Harpers Ferry being kind of loosely on the northern end, to print your permit. And also, these are good for a really long time, so realistically you could potentially print your permit before you start the trail, depending on how aggressive your schedule is. Now, you do not have to specify your campsites when you're going through as a through hiker, so you don't have a hard set itinerary. You can get on and off as needed. You just have to have this permit now going through the Shenandoahs. Now, the third and final place that you're going to need to obtain a permit to hike through on the Appalachian Trail is Baxter State Park. Now, this permit is completely free, but it is 100% required that you get it. You can obtain this permit in person from the ranger station at Katahdin Stream Campground. Now, when you're hiking northbound, if you're coming off of that little 10-mile stretch between A-Ball Bridge and Katahdin Stream Campground, when you reach the sign, when you first walk into the campground, you go left to get to the Katahdin, basically the hunt trail. You're gonna go left. You'll go right to get to the ranger station. So you have to go to the ranger station and register your attempt on the mountain with the ranger that's in residence there. There's a little trail log where they want you to sign in your name, and you will get a little purple registration card that has your through hiker designation, whether that's northbound, southbound, or flip-flop. You will carry that little hard copy with you when you go up the mountain. You may be required to show it. We didn't run into any rangers when we summited Katahdin, but basically this is the way that they keep track of who is on the mountain. You will also have to sign in on a little book when you enter the hunt trail and then at any point when you exit, and you'll be turning in a copy of a through hiker registration card that is separate from that purple permit that you're going to get on your way out of the park. And that's just so that Baxter State Park can keep track of who is on Katahdin at any given time and who is in the park, because they do have to do search and rescues on Katahdin every year and they want to keep you as safe as possible. Now, just a few things to consider when you're getting this permit. These cards are valid for 7 days, so you can literally go and get your permit, spend some time either in the park hiking around, or maybe a Millinocket, or waiting for a weather window, whatever you want to do, but you have 7 days from the time you register to climb the mountain. The max number of cards that they issue to through hikers in a single hiking season is 3,150 according to their website. That doesn't sound like a lot, but when I went through and finished my through hike in mid-September, I was only hiker number 774 I think it was 773, 774, something like that. We were the upper 700s. So you shouldn't have any issues with getting this permit is kind of the point that I'm getting at. Now, Mount Katahdin doesn't open until early June because a lot of this depends on when there's still snow on the mountain, because trust me guys, that mountain is a climb and it is dangerous. The mountain also has a hard stop close date, October 15th, but that could change based on the weather. If they start getting snow in early October, they'll close the mountain, and you will start seeing snow typically early to mid-October. So when you're considering doing a flip-flop versus a full northbound through hike, just keep those dates in mind, because really the date that everybody goes by where Katahdin is going to be closed October 14th or October 15th every year. So just keep that in mind when you're planning your through hike. You may need to flip north if you're not going fast enough if you want to finish on Katahdin. And then if you're planning a through hike starting southbound, plan to start after early June if you want to summit Katahdin really to officially start your trip. If you want to kind of flip-flop and just summit Katahdin later, that's fine. You can start in the 100-mile wilderness, but just a few things to think about when you're planning your hike. Also, there's no camping allowed in Baxter State Park after October 22nd, and I believe that's primarily for safety reasons, because that's about the time that the park becomes buried in snow and the roads are going to be inaccessible. So just a few things to think about when you're planning your hike through Baxter State Park. You can always call any of the ranger stations for Baxter, the Shenies, or the Smokies with any questions about their permit system. And I am fairly certain a lot of the outfitters along the way are also familiar with permits in these areas, so you can always ask questions. And as per usual, if you guys have any questions, comments, or things to add to what I've told you in this video, please comment below. Please like and subscribe the channel, share with your friends. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and happy trails.